Hey everyone, welcome back. We are on episode 3 now. This is Kristen and Michelle.
Hello.
We have for you some fun, adventurous stories today. Last week we had some good times with Valentine's Day type of stuff and demonic
Murderous
cool
princesses.
princesses. So good. So good. In the process of becoming an anime. So good.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. This week we have a pirate's tale and we have a who knows,
What was it?
heartwarming bakery story, I guess.
Yeah.
Let's see what Michelle did with it though.
We have One Piece and Encanto.
Yes.
Yes.
One can.
Yes.
Yes. So, this time we're going to try something different. We just want to see if maybe reading our own stories, our reading style will change, and just, we'll see how that goes, and we're just going to try it out for this week, and let us know if you guys like this, or if you prefer hearing us read each other's stories. So, last week, Michelle gave me the prompt of a pirate who ends up on a ghost island looking for treasure. And here's what I did with it. My story is called The Phantom Isles. Yar, we be sailing for treasure today.
Dude.
Yeah. Yeah. Captain Barrett announced with a slight grin.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Wait. Did you say Yar?
Yeah.
Okay, start
No,
again.
sorry, Yar.
Okay. Yar.
Captain, you promised you'll stop talking in that stereotypical manner. We've been pirates for years, and not once has any of us spoken in that way but you, her quartermaster had said in a defeated tone, as if she had to remind her captain of this too many times. Captain Barrett looked down at her, her eyes piercing with a glare that you could almost feel a burning heat on your flesh, then threw her head up laughing. I know, but I'm the captain, and the captain says that being a pirate is all about freedom and fun. As the night proceeded, Barrett decided to head off the ship and head to town to explore while her crew was singing and having their nightly festivities. Upon arriving in town, she was shocked by how many people were still bustling through the streets. Doing a quick lap through the markets and main roads, Barrett had picked up that these people were very carefree and loved to party, so the city's nightlife might be more active than the daytime. Now that she had finished taking a look around the main roads, she decided it'd be time to venture through some of the alleys to map out any potential hiding places in case trouble was to find her, as it so often did. Please, spare some food. An old man sat on the corner of one of the alleys, reaching out to anyone passing by, but seemingly being ignored. Barrett grew up on the streets, and most of her pirate crew were actually kids that she had met along the way, either saving them from fake orphanages that used children as slaves, or kids that were abandoned because their parents just couldn't handle having multiple children in the family. She approached the man and kneeled down while pulling out a small package wrapped in cloth. Here you go. Eat up. I wish I had more on me, but this is all I have available right now. She unwrapped the cloth and revealed to him a small sandwich that she had packed in case she found a nice tree to rest under and wanted a snack. The man looked at her and smiled as wide as she had ever seen someone smile before. The joy that he must be feeling in this moment indicated to her that he may have gone days without food. He held the sandwich and tried to chew into it, taking small bites. Realizing the bread may be a bit tough, Barrett offered the man a drink from her flask. Sorry, all I have is some rum on me, but it should help soften the bread and make it easier to chew. Passerbys kept on giving the pair such strange looks, as if to inquire why Barrett is helping this man. After finishing his meal, he grabbed Barrett's hands and touched his forehead down to her, bowing. Thank you. You are truly a kind soul. I cannot repay you for this deed, but here, please take my one treasure. The man pulled out a large piece of parchment rolled up. Bearth tried to decline. Please, I couldn't possibly take your treasure from you. I just did what I felt was right. You owe me nothing. The man persisted until Bearth finally gave in and thanked him. As she departed, there was a slight chill down her spine. She glanced over her shoulder, only to see that the man was no longer there. Continuing forward, she opened up the parchment to see what the man's treasure was while heading back to her ship. Oi, Captain, Barrett's quartermaster had called out to her upon getting back on the ship. And where'd you go? She asked, drunkenly slurring her words. I just wanted to take a look around town, and guess what I got? Our next adventure. This man I helped gave me a map, and it looks like it's not too far from here. Just a few days of sailing, and we can get there. She excitedly explained to her quartermaster. That's nice, that's nice. The quartermaster made herself a little bed on the floor and passed out. The next morning, Bearth had given the map to their navigator and began to set sail towards this mysterious island. Over the course of a few days of sailing, they encountered many dangers. The first night, they were hit with a storm, which they've sailed through before, but then large chunks of hail started falling. The second day, a large whirlpool suddenly showed up, but the navigator was able to steer away from it. The next day, they encountered a large sea serpent, but managed to fight that off too. Finally, they arrived at their destination, which was a large, beautiful island filled with lush plant life. Captain Barrett wanted to say some sort of pirate stereotypical thing, but was so exhausted that the words couldn't come out of her mouth. The crew docked the ship and rushed onto land with excitement. They unloaded supplies and prepared to rest as they had spent the last few days in what felt like hell. As the sun began to set, the island lit up in the most wondrous colors. It's as if everything the sun touched was kissed with a glow, which made the crew feel relaxed and in awe. Bearth was looking over the map at her tent, trying to figure out what part of the island they had landed on based on the rough design, when suddenly she heard screaming. Rushing out of her tent, she quickly realized how dark it was, and that even their own campfire lights seemed strangely dim. What happened? What's going on? Bearth asked the crew in a panic. Everyone looked at her puzzled, as if someone wasn't screaming literally 2 seconds ago. We're just getting set up and having some snacks? Her first mate had said with a very confused look. None of you just screamed? She began counting everyone and saw that they were all there. No, we've just been here getting settled. Maybe you're a bit tired or... The first mate stopped, and their eyes went wide open. Barrett turned around to see a green flame hovering in the bushes, with a pair of red eyes staring at their party. Slowly, figures started emerging from the bushes, creeping toward the camp. They looked human, but they had a dark haze surrounding them, and as they stepped out of the bushes, a sudden mist appeared that hindered the crew's visibility. Everyone to arms! Whatever these are, they are trying to surround us! Bearth rallied her crew. As the figures took a few more steps closer to the camp, a loud whistling sound pierced everyone's ears and the mist lifted. The figures were gone. What the hell was that? We have to get on our ship and leave right now. I am not staying here. One of the crewmates shouted frantically. Enough. We are not going anywhere but forward towards the treasure. Bearth sternly asserted herself to the crew, giving them that gaze again where they could do nothing but submit. Bearth cared deeply for her crew and wouldn't let anything harm them, but after the treacherous journey here, she knew they couldn't leave without getting ample rest first. Everybody get some rest. We're exploring tomorrow. With that, Bearth headed back into her tent. The next day, the crewmates had barely slept after their run-in with what they assumed to be the island's residents. After the crew had finished eating and preparing their equipment, they set out into the same bushes where the figures came from the night before. Usually, everyone walked with such bounce in their step, moving carefree on any path they traveled. But this time, they all clung together, trying to be as close to Barrett as possible. The crew managed to traverse enough of the forest to come to a small clearing with a statue in the middle. The statue had big red gems for eyes and was decorated in an assortment of gold and silver. Barrett closed in on the statue, giving it a look over, and ran her hands across it, feeling the texture of the stone. She found it strange that this thing didn't seem to have any wear or imperfections. Not a single chip in the stone, and not a touch of moss growing on it. She gestured for everyone to continue forward and to leave the statue. The sun was setting again, and that beautiful glow shone over the trees once more. At first, everyone was in awe until they realized, after the beauty they're witnessing now, comes the darkness and the terrors within it. Before the last of the sunlight had escaped, the crew had found a cave that they could get set up in for the night, as it would be impossible for them to navigate in this darkness, especially with those things potentially out there. Once more, Barrett opened up the map and studied it. It got colder all around, and with it came howling. The howls sounded like a group of humans in despair after being tortured, and being in the cave caused it to echo even more hauntingly. The crew went further into the cave, hoping to put distance between the origin of the howling and themselves. But the sound was steady, and it felt as if it was running with them. It wouldn't get closer, but it wouldn't get further. As the crew was running through the cave, they spotted a light up ahead. Barrett stopped everyone for a moment and contemplated if they should deal with what was making those sounds, or whatever lit up the room ahead. She decided it was best to move forward, as the path they were on in this cave was too narrow to properly deal with anything coming at them from behind. They approached the room with caution, trying to make as little noise as possible, hoping not to alert whoever lit up the room. Upon entering, the crew was in shock again. Piles of gold climbing up high, gemstones and jewelry scattered everywhere. The light they had been seeing was the moonlight shining through a hole in the ceiling of the cave, reflecting off all of the perfectly polished pieces of treasure. The crew forgot for a moment of the haunting sounds and wanted to celebrate as they freely ran around the room, touching all of the treasure. The celebrating, though, was short-lived, as a loud scream came from the opposite end of the room. This time, it was from one of the crewmates. Barrett rushed over to the crewmate to find that all around them was not just treasure, but bones and fragments of skeletons. The howling was no longer a steady distance away, but it sounded as if it was at the entrance of the room. Suddenly, black smoke started pouring in and the figures were back. In the distance of the smoke, red glowing eyes again. Barrett's crew had their weapons ready and stood their ground, waiting for the right moment. "Everybody charge them!" Barrett shouted with her sword up in the air. As the crew ran towards the figures, the whistling sound from the night before was heard again, but this time so loud everyone dropped their weapons to cover their ears and fell to their knees. Barrett looked up to see what was making the sound. How are you here?" She questioned the man in front of her with the white glow around him, whistling at the dark, shrouded figures. The entities disappeared, and the man stopped whistling. "Ah, I see you made it here, fairly quickly. I was right about you." The man smiled. Barrett was confused, because this was the poor, starving man from the alleyway. At least, he kind of looked like it, but his clothing was in better shape, and his body was no longer weak and fragile. "This island is both a beauty and a prison. The bones you see around you are all the pirates and thieves who would ever try to steal from me, and this treasure is everything they've collected over the years. he explained. Bereth was confused and had no idea what was happening. Oh, come now. You look as if you've never seen a ghost before. Bereth began to laugh. What? Ghosts? Come on. This must be some elaborate trick here. How are you doing all this? She couldn't believe anything that she was being told. The man explained that a long time ago, a group of pirates came to this island and murdered his entire village. Somehow, his resentment and will for revenge were so strong that he was able to become this powerful spirit. He used this power to lure pirates here and steal that which they valued most: their lives and their treasure, while also trapping their souls on this island forever in torment. The treasure was now cursed in a way that if any of the spirits tried to touch it, their very essence would begin to crumble and then reform over and over to ensure their suffering was endless. It seems that you all being on this island riled them up further. By now they know their place and just wallow in the darkness. But it seems they want to take over your bodies so they can live once again and leave this place. He began to chuckle. When you approached me the other day, I had sifted through your heart and seen all the deeds you have done for the people around you. I deemed you a worthy person who would be best to enact my final act of torture. Please, take as much of the treasure as you can carry. Nothing would hurt them more than seeing their treasure slip away from them even further. That's the end.
That's the end?
It's the end.
Oh, bruh.
Yes, the end.
So, in the end, the captain was helped by the hobo.
Aha, oui.
Damn! So he was a ghost?
He was a ghost the whole time.
Oh, damn. Pretty good. Yeah, man. So how'd you feel about writing it?
You know, when I was first writing this, a lot of random thoughts and inspirations came to my mind, like thing after thing, idea after idea, and I was like, hold on, what's happening here? I don't even care for pirates. And then I couldn't stop writing. So I was like, oh boy, what's going on here? And like, I know I left the ending very open-ended, but I wanted to do so in a way that lets everyone think, you know, what do you think Bereth is going to do? Do you think Bereth is going to call the man crazy and just leave? Do you think she's going to take the treasure? Do you think he's going to turn on her because he'll see how greedy her crewmates are? Like, there's so much endless possibilities for the way that can go, and I kind of want to leave that up to the reader.
Yeah.
Yeah, or in this case, the listener.
Yeah. I was picturing them as like Abu from
Oh yeah.
From Aladdin. Yeah. It's
adorable.
A bunch of three little monkeys.
It's like, oh, what's that? Put that under my hat. Thank you.
Yeah, and she's just sitting there like, Abu, no!
Don't touch that. It's cursed. Money.
Monkey. Yeah.
Love monkeys. So you like it?
Yeah, it was good. It was, No, to be honest, I forgot that I mentioned ghosts until the end.
Until the ghosts
I'm like,
appeared.
oh, there are ghosts.
I forgot there was ghosts until there were ghosts.
I
Whoa.
forgot that there were ghosts in the prompt. I'm like, yes, story is going. Oh yeah, ghosts. Fuck. So no, that was good.
Hooray. Now, I hope that you all will give us some information on that and what you guys thought of my story there. But now, Michelle can go ahead and see if she made my sappy prompt into another murder story or into something sweet, just like the pastries of the baker.
I don't know what I wrote. Okay, so my story didn't end up being super long, but boy, did I use a lot of words from the thesaurus.
My story wasn't long, but I did use words.
Like plenty, like oh. All right.
All right.
So, hold on, let me get some water. Should have got water beforehand, but I don't know how to act right.
It's okay. We're gonna edit all this out.
Ready? Yeah, you ready. Okay, so this is the story, and this is the prompt that I was given by Kristen last week. A young baker discovers that their pastries have the ability to heal people. However, they found out after their parents had passed away, if they had discovered this ability earlier, their parents may have survived. The story is called The Immortal. And here it goes. An immortal being didn't have much to offer society. Despite his young appearance, he had lived through every up and down in human history for the last 1,000 years, and at some point just felt like someone watching a play, disconnected from the world. A long time ago he tried having friends, but that would barely even last their lifetime, so he quickly gave up on that. He didn't remember much about the beginning of his life, just that his parents had passed away from an illness when he was young, leaving him to fend for himself. Even 1,000 years later, he still thought that it was ironic that their lives had been cut short, while his seemed infinite and inescapable. He was more or less indestructible. At one point, he sold himself to a circus and earned money that way, until he got bored and moved on to something new. He had traveled the world and met all kinds of people, done all kinds of jobs, but never got close to anyone, and always left as soon as he was getting too comfortable. He felt like an anchor in the ocean of time, waiting for it to end. Nothing was able to satisfy him, or even leave an impression on him, until one day he met a little girl who relentlessly questioned him about life, and everything and anything that caught her attention at the time. "What's your favorite color? Second favorite? Third? How do birds fly? Where do the clouds come from? Why does it rain?" He was never bored around her, because he found it amusing that he didn't know the answers to some of her questions. He had lived for so long and was so sure that he knew everything until he met her. As she grew, the questions she asked became more and more difficult. Why did he choose someone else over me? Why can't people just get along? How do you stop someone from feeling lost? Is it possible to forgive? She was the last person to leave an impression on him, because she never asked the one question that he'd always heard. Why don't you age? After meeting her and experiencing one lifetime of questions, he remembered why he had always kept his distance from people. Because when the questions stopped, there was a deafening silence in his life. The entire world turned gray for who knows how long, until eventually the silence was replaced by his own questions, stemming from the unanswerable questions that she had asked him. With the flow of time, he came to be amazed by the advancements that people achieved, and he was finally able to answer questions like why it rained and where clouds came from. Despite his better judgment, he became curious about people and began watching them from a distance, wondering what each and every one of them could be so busy doing. He watched as some people worked to attain things like happiness, love, wealth, power, or all of the above. He watched their methods and worked to understand their motivations. Why were some people content with abstract things that you couldn't hold? Why were others constantly grinding for more? What was the purpose for attaining anything at all? As the years passed, watching people never gave him a single answer, but multiple answers, along with more questions. What about the people who've become fodder? How can you tell what's right and what's wrong? Why do some sacrifices go unrewarded? He would wander for many years more, answering questions and thinking of new ones, And he thought about how people had always remained the same, even since his time. They were always tethered to the meta of society, always struggling to be accepted, or at least to find a place to feel at ease. People were still being pressured and labeled as useful or useless, and put out of sight when they didn't fit in. It had always been that way. Even though everyone had an inherent need to be accepted by others, they would still lash out at each other. He chuckled to himself. People are complicated, and that kept things interesting. Acting in almost complete disregard for their own lives for the sake of monetary value was something familiar to him as well. His parents were like that. However, they had been working to allow him to live. He wasn't one to reminisce, but there was something about rainy days like today that made him think back on his life. Maybe this was because the day the relentless questions started, the day they ended, and the day they started again, all sounded exactly like this. He found himself often thinking about the time he found a place he could breathe easy. A place where the colors were brighter. In his gray stupor after losing his friend, he had been wandering the earth for a long time when a familiar smell caught his attention. He looked up to see a marketplace filled with brightly colored stalls on a background of short buildings with bleached white concrete walls and clay-tiled roofs. He seemed to have made his way to a similar mountainside village facing the ocean. The clouds were dark, and the rain was starting to fall, like today. It was strange to him, because he had seen places like this thousands of times already and never felt the way he was feeling at that moment. He followed the scent to one of the small buildings, passing by stalls where merchants were helping each other put up tarps to protect the merchandise from the rain. Even in the rain, the scent wafted through the air and drew him in. He entered the building and was greeted with the warmth that he thought had been lost forever. He was standing in what looked like a tiny bakery, walls lined with green potted plants, rustic wall decorations hanging everywhere, pleasant displays filled with charming little pastries, and a huge line of people waiting to make purchases. He peeked around the line of people and caught a glimpse of a little boy bringing out a fresh tray of familiar-looking pastries. The pastries were a recipe that he had taught his dear friend, that his mother had taught him, and the little boy holding the tray looked exactly like his dear friend at that age. As much as he wanted to stay in that cozy little bakery and smell the scent of the pastries, he ducked back out of the door. The sky was dark and the rain was cold. Even so, he was filled with an unbelievable warmth, because it had been the first time he had noticed the sky in a long time. Eventually the rain stopped, and he was brought back to the present. He was leaning on the counter with a hand propping up his head. With a sigh, he stood up, straightening out his back. Just then, the bell on the door jingled, and in walked a burly man and his dog, who would always come by to his bakery first thing in the morning to buy a few of his signature pastries. He was able to open his own small bakery in the middle of the city, crammed between two giant office buildings. The shop had made a lasting impression on him when he found it. There was just something so out of place about it, as if a big city like this would never usually have room for something that wasn't a skyscraper. He rang up the man's order, petted the dog on the head, and held the door open for him as he did every morning. The burly man thanked him and walked through the door, but before leaving, he opened his umbrella and turned to the Immortal. "You know, when I eat your pastries, I always feel so relaxed and calm. I think your baking has the ability to heal people." "You think so?" he mused. The burly man laughed. "I know so." "Well, if that's what you think, then that's how it must be," he smiled back. The rain started again, and as the Immortal watched the burly man walk down the sidewalk, he started reminiscing about his overworked parents, and how maybe he could have healed them too. He chuckled to himself and went back into his bakery to get ready for the lunch rush, letting the door close with a musical jingle. The end.
Wow. Look at that. That was not what I was thinking was going to happen at all. I literally, in my mind, was just like, I never thought about immortality. I just thought it was like, all right, this guy's going to make pastries. They're going to feed it to people. People are going to have their like arms mend themselves again. Like parts of their body just going to like unbreak themselves. The people are going to be able to walk. And that's going to be it. And he's just going to be like, oh, why didn't I do this to my parents? And instead, he lived for thousands of years. Immortal, endless, all sorts of stuff. It's just like, yeah.
Yeah, man. That was like, is he gonna physically heal anybody? No.
Is he? No. Can he?
Was it happy? Like, I was writing the whole thing. I'm like, is this happy? I don't know. I wouldn't say it's happy. It's just kind of...
It's like a bittersweetness because, you know, it's one of those things where it's like he's progressing with his life. He's trying to do things to keep himself amused. He's trying to, like, go over that stuff and, you know, keep time and whatever, you know? But it's like... It's a lot, you know? Immortality gets to you. It really does.
Right? It does, right? That's what I was trying to catch.
Yeah, no, it totally, like, for myself as well, being around for the many years that I have been.
In my experience, yeah.
Yeah, in my personal experience as a Celestial, it does get tiring, but then, like, every couple hundred years you find, like, your own Michelle and you're good. So you're fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. This is my 17th Michelle.
Yeah. Do you, like, keep, like, finding them, or are you, like...
Oh, no, I'm creating them.
Yeah. You, like, find them...
It's no coincidence that I'm Baker.
Yeah, so I'm really just... A lot of people don't know this. I'm really just bread. I mean, like, no one really can tell.
Yeah.
No one really can tell when they, like, first, like, meet me until, like, something falls off.
Until it rains.
Shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds right, yeah.
It's a glimpse into the life that we live daily.
Oh, yeah.
Only a fraction of our power.
Yeah, no. Is there anything we forgot to say? Oh, the fucking prompts!
Yeah, no, that's why, like, I'm waiting for you.
Okay, let me just say some finishing thoughts about my story. So... That was written by me. I'm so tired.
So tired of yourself.
Like, I didn't want to do something that, like, was predictable. You know, I wanted to take it and, like, put a spin on it where, because in that way, even though you have the prompt and you know what the whole story is about, when you start the story and you're going through the story, you have no clue what's going on, like, in relation to the prompt. You just know it's, like, at first glance, it's, like, an entirely different story.
And that's the thing. I think it's a good thing to do as well, because, you know, you don't want people to be like, all right, you know, this is going to be a prompt about a baker, so what's going to start off? They're going to be baking. And it's like, no, there's more layers of depth to the story and to the character. You get an insight into their life, insight into everything going on there. And then at the end, or like partway through, in some cases, you find out it's like, oh, now that piece of the prompt is in here tying in. It doesn't have to be a focal point. It just has to be a point.
Exactly. It's because the point of a prompt is for it to be a guideline. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to, you know?
Exactly.
So, speaking of prompts, what's next week's prompt for me?
All right. So, next week's prompt. Now, yes.
Yes.
Your prompt for next week is: you're married to a famous stage magician who's always trying to spice up your marriage.
Are you trying to make me write a smut?
No.
Don't lie to me.
You can't pull a rabbit out of there.
You just gave me that prompt. The prompt should have just been, you pull a rabbit out of...
So what do you have in store for me next week?
So your prompt is going to be about a witch who is trying to find their familiar. But their familiar has to be a black cat. So they're going to be going through like a bunch of black cats.
Okay. I mean, I'm just going to be writing my autobiography, essentially. Yes. So that's...
You're just going to write about the day you found Umbra?
Basically. And it's going to be like, once upon a day, I went down the street and my friend's cat gave birth to kittens, so I took one.
No, ran. It has to be, okay, let me rephrase that. A witch is trying to find her black cat familiar, and she's holding auditions. Okay,
that's gonna be hilarious. No, I'm ready. I got it. Story's done. See y'all next week.
Done and done.
Again, thank you all for listening in. If anyone has any suggestions on any prompts, any writing techniques, any reading techniques, anything at all, any feedback, advice, we're always open. So, yeah, if you have the app.
I think we'll close on Sundays.
Yeah, it's a day of rest. But feel free to reach out.
Yeah, man.
Don't you have closing notes?
Oh, shit! Yeah, no. So, like, next week it's gonna be what? Like, this week was Encanto and One Piece, and next week it's gonna be Bewitched and Smut.
Be aroused.
Be aroused. Yeah, so yeah, thanks for listening. We're gonna have another new episode next week, same time, same place. And yeah, we'll see if maybe I can write something like real, like happy for real. Maybe one day.
Hopefully. We'll see what happens, but thanks again for everyone listening, and toodles.
Bye.
I think this could be very cute.
Huh?
This could be a cute... Spicing up your marriage doesn't have to be about the extra stuff. It could just be about the day-to-day of, like, comes home, surprises you with, oh my god, is that, like, a tennis bracelet that never ends? Wow!
A tennis bracelet that never ends? Look how it keeps going. I can't wait.
Going. And at the very end of it, it's like the keys to a new car. I don't know. Spice it up by money.
I read way too much smut to like listen to that prompt, and
yeah.
Smut stuff I'm gonna edit out. I'm not gonna expose myself like that.
I know. No, I'm expecting you to edit out all of this, everything.